Lady Seraphina Blackwood stared at the letter in her trembling hands, the Duke's desperate words burning into her soul like a brand of shame. "I need an heir," his elegant script declared. "You alone possess what I require. Name your price." The irony wasn't lost on her. The most powerful man in all of England was begging the very woman whose bloodline carried the curse that had destroyed his family for generations. The autumn rain pelted the windows of Ravenscroft Manor as Seraphina pressed the letter to her chest, feeling her heart shatter with each thunderous beat. For 25 years she had hidden her secret. The mark on her shoulder, the power that flowed through her veins, the curse that made her both his salvation and his doom. Duke Ashton Ravenscroft had everything: wealth, title, power beyond measure. But the one thing he needed most, an heir to continue his bloodline, remained forever out of reach. His virgin state wasn't by choice, it was by necessity, for any woman who shared his bed would die within days, victims of the ancient curse that plagued the Ravenscroft line. Until now, when Ashton's desperate plea arrived at her door, Seraphina knew she faced an impossible choice. Give him what he wanted, and risk exposing the truth that would destroy them both, or refuse and watch the man she had loved from afar for years die without an heir, taking his noble line to the grave. The fire crackled in the hearth as Seraphina made her decision. She would go to him. She would teach him everything he needed to know, but she would never tell him the truth about what she really was. Some secrets were worth dying for. The first time Seraphina saw Duke Ashton Ravenscroft, she was 12 years old and hiding behind the oak trees at the edge of his estate. Even then, she knew she was different. Her mother had warned her never to let anyone see the crescent-shaped mark on her left shoulder, never to let anyone discover what flowed in her veins. "The Blackwood blood is ancient," her mother had whispered on her deathbed. "Older than kingdoms, more powerful than kings, but with great power comes great danger. Promise me you'll stay hidden." Seraphina had promised, but promises meant little when your heart belonged to a man you could never have. Now, 13 years later, she stood before the imposing gates of Ravenscroft Castle, her travelling bag clutched in her white-knuckled grip. The Duke's carriage waited in the courtyard, black as midnight with silver crests that gleamed like starlight. She had sent word that she would come, that she would help him, but she hadn't told him the whole truth about why she was the only woman who could survive his touch. The massive oak doors of the castle swung open before she could even knock. Duke Ashton Ravenscroft stood in the doorway, and Seraphina's breath caught in her throat. He was even more beautiful than she remembered. Tall and broad-shouldered, with hair as black as sin and eyes the color of storm clouds, but it was the pain in those eyes that made her heart ache. "Lady Blackwood," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You came." "You asked me to," she replied simply, stepping across the threshold. "Though I confess I don't understand why you chose me." Something flickered across his aristocratic features. Shame, perhaps, or desperation, because you're the only woman in England who isn't afraid of me. If only he knew the truth. Seraphina wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what she might do to him. The Duke led her through corridors lined with portraits of his ancestors, strong men with proud faces who had ruled these lands for centuries, but there was something else in those painted eyes, a darkness that seemed to follow their movements like a living thing. "My family is cursed," Ashton said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Has been for 300 years. Every Duke of Ravenscroft dies without an heir. Every woman who shares our bed dies within a fortnight." Seraphina's steps faltered. "Dies? How? No one knows." His voice was hollow with old grief. "They simply fade, like flowers wilting in winter. The physicians can never explain it. The church calls it God's judgment. I call it hell on earth. They stopped before a massive painting of a beautiful woman in medieval dress. Her dark hair flowed like water, and her eyes held secrets deeper than the ocean. "Lady Morgana Blackwood," Ashton said softly. "My ancestor's wife, the woman who cursed my bloodline." Seraphina's heart stopped. "Blackwood, you didn't know?" He turned to study her face intently. "She was your ancestor, Lady Seraphina. The woman who damned my family bore your name." The world tilted on its axis. Seraphina gripped the wall for support as the truth crashed over her like a tidal wave. The curse, the mark on her shoulder, her mother's warnings. It all made terrible, perfect sense. "Tell me about her," Seraphina whispered, her voice barely audible. Ashton's jaw tightened. "She was a witch. A sorceress who seduced my ancestor, Duke Edmund Ravencroft, then cursed him when he betrayed her love. No Ravencroft shall know true happiness," she declared. "No heir shall be born until one pays the price for Edmund's betrayal." Seraphina closed her eyes, her grandmother's stories flooding back to her, tales of a beautiful ancestor who loved a duke but lost him to politics and pride. A woman who wielded ancient magic in the name of justice. "What price?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "A Blackwood must willingly give herself to undo what was done." Ashton's voice was barely a whisper. "But every Blackwood woman died out generations ago, or so I thought." He stepped closer, his storm-grey eyes searching hers, "until I learned that one survived, that you carry the blood of the woman who destroyed my family." The truth hung between them like a blade ready to fall. Seraphina could deny it, could claim ignorance. But the heat building in her veins, the way his nearness made her skin burn, told her that lies would serve no purpose now. "Why did you really ask me here?" she said instead. "Because I'm dying," he replied with brutal honesty. "The curse grows stronger with each generation. My father died at 35, his father at 32. I'm 30 now, and I can feel it consuming me from within." He took her hand, and fire shot up her arm at the contact. "I need an heir, Seraphina, and you're the only woman who might survive long enough to give me one." His touch burned, but not with pain, with something far more dangerous, with recognition, with power calling to power, with the curse recognizing its own blood. "And if I refuse?" she asked, though they both knew she wouldn't. "Then I die childless, and the Ravencroft line dies with me." He lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "But if you help me, if you teach me what I need to know, I'll give you anything you desire." Seraphina stared into those storm cloud eyes and made her choice. Not for money or title or power, but for the man who had haunted her dreams for 13 years. The man who was willing to risk everything for a chance at love. "I'll help you," she whispered, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "No questions about my past. No demands for explanations I can't give. And when this is over," she swallowed hard, "when this is over, I leave, no matter what happens between us." Something like pain flashed across his features. Agreed. But as he led her deeper into the castle, toward chambers that would become her prison and her paradise, Seraphina knew she was lying to them both, because she could never tell him that she wasn't just the key to breaking his curse. She was the curse itself. The Duke had given her the finest chambers in the East Wing, rooms fit for a queen with silk hangings and furniture that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. But luxury meant nothing when you carried the weight of 3 centuries of guilt on your shoulders. Seraphina stood before the massive mirror in her dressing room, her reflection pale as moonlight in the silver glass. Slowly, she slipped the gown from her shoulders, revealing the mark that had haunted her since birth. The crescent moon, dark as midnight against her pale skin, the symbol of the Blackwood witches. Her mother had tried to burn it away when Serafina was 7 years old, had pressed hot irons to her flesh until she screamed, but the mark had only grown darker, more pronounced, as if pain made it stronger. "You cannot escape what you are," her mother had whispered as she tended the burns. "But you can choose how to use it." Now, 23 years later, Serafina finally understood what her mother meant. A soft knock at her door made her quickly pull on her silk robe. "Enter," she called, expecting a servant. Instead, Duke Ashton stepped into the room, and Serafina's heart nearly stopped. He had changed from his formal attire into a simple white shirt and dark trousers. The casual clothing made him look younger, more vulnerable, more dangerous to her already fragile control. "I brought you something," he said, holding out a leather-bound book. Serafina accepted it with trembling fingers. "What is it?" "Everything I know about the curse, about your ancestor and mine." I thought you might want to understand what we're facing." She opened the book to find page after page of careful notes. Research spanning decades, desperate attempts to understand and break the curse that had claimed so many lives. "You've been studying this for years," she observed. "Since I was old enough to understand that I was different." He moved to stand beside her at the window, his presence making her skin burn with awareness. "Did you know that 7 women have tried to help my family over the centuries? All of them died." Serafina's blood ran cold. "What happened to them?" "They withered away like flowers in winter. The physicians could never explain it, but I think I understand now." He turned to face her, his grey eyes intense. "They weren't strong enough. They didn't carry the power needed to break what Lady Morgana created. And you think I do?" "I know you do." His hand came up to touch her cheek, and Serafina had to fight not to lean into the caress. "I can feel it in you, Serafina. Something ancient, something powerful, something that calls to the darkness in me." He was right. She could feel it too. The way his presence made her magic sing, the way his touch ignited fires in her blood that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with destiny. "Tell me about your first time," she said suddenly, the words escaping before she could stop them. Ashton went very still. "My first time with a woman. You said you're untouched. But surely you must have tried." A bitter laugh escaped his lips. "Once, when I was 22, a courtesan in London, beautiful, experienced, willing." His jaw tightened. "She was dead within 3 days. Physicians said her heart simply stopped. But I knew the truth." "It wasn't your fault," Serafina said softly. "Wasn't it?" His hand fell away from her face. "Every woman who touches me dies, Serafina. How is that not my fault? Because you didn't choose this curse. You didn't ask for it." She turned to face him fully, her resolve hardening. "And that's why I'm here, to break it." "How?" The word was barely a whisper. Serafina took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would change everything between them. "By teaching you that not all touch leads to death. By showing you that some women are strong enough to survive what you carry." She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "Let me show you, Ashton. Let me teach you what it means to touch without fear." His breath caught audibly. "Serafina, you don't understand. If I lose control, if I hurt you, you won't." She reached up to place her palm flat against his chest, over his racing heart. "Trust me." For a moment, they stood frozen in time. Two souls bound by destiny and divided by secrets. Then Ashton's hand covered hers, his fingers intertwining with her own. "I don't know how," he admitted, his voice rough with vulnerability. "Then let me teach you," she whispered. "Let me show you that touch can heal instead of harm." She guided his free hand to her face, showing him how to caress without claiming, how to worship without possessing. His fingers trembled against her skin, as if he expected her to crumble at any moment. "You're not going to hurt me," she assured him, her voice steady despite the magic singing in her veins. "I'm stronger than you think." "How do you know?" "Because I'm the reason you're cursed," she thought but couldn't say. "Because my blood is the antidote to the poison that runs through your veins." "Because I choose to be," she said instead. That night, as Ashton left her chambers with wonder and hope shining in his storm-grey eyes, Serafina knew she was walking a knife's edge between salvation and destruction. She could break his curse, could give him everything he'd ever wanted, but it would cost her everything she was. The next morning brought with it a sense of anticipation that hummed through the very walls of Ravencroft Castle. Serafina woke to find breakfast already laid out in her sitting room, along with a note written in Ashton's elegant script. "Thank you for showing me that touch doesn't have to mean death. Meet me in the library at 10. There's something I need to tell you." Serafina, dressed carefully in a gown of deep blue silk that brought out the silver flecks in her eyes. She braided her long black hair with silver ribbons, trying to calm the nervous energy that made her hands shake. The library at Ravencroft Castle was magnificent, with towering shelves that reached toward a painted ceiling depicting scenes of heaven and earth. Ashton stood before a massive fireplace, his back to her as she entered. "You wanted to see me," she said softly. He turned, and Serafina's breath caught at the intensity in his grey eyes. "There's something I need to tell you about last night. About what I felt when you touched me." "What did you feel?" "Peace." The word seemed to surprise him even as he spoke it. For the first time in 30 years, "Serafina, I felt peace. The darkness that usually claws at my soul when I'm near a woman, it was quiet." Serafina's heart raced. The curse was already beginning to weaken. Her presence, her touch, was doing exactly what she'd hoped it would. "That's good," she said carefully. "That means we're on the right path. But I need to know why." He stepped closer, his eyes searching her face. "Why you're different? Why don't you fear me the way others do?" "Because I'm the source of your curse," she thought desperately. "Because my ancestors' blood runs through my veins, and I'm the only one who can undo what she did." "Maybe," she said slowly, "some people are just meant to find each other." It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't entirely a lie either. Whatever else the curse had done, it had bound their bloodlines together for 3 centuries. In a way, they were meant for each other. "Show me more," he said suddenly. "More? Last night you showed me how to touch without fear. But I need to know more than that, Serafina. I need to learn how to—" He struggled with the words. "How to be intimate without causing death." Heat flooded Serafina's cheeks. "Ashton, I'm not sure that's wise. Please." The raw desperation in his voice made her heart ache. "I've lived 30 years believing I could never know love. Never know the touch of a woman without bringing her death. If there's even a chance that you can teach me otherwise—" Serafina closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 3 centuries pressing down on her shoulders. She could refuse, could claim ignorance or propriety, but the magic in her blood was singing, calling out to the curse that bound him. "Very well," she whispered. "But we go slowly, and if at any point you feel the darkness rising, I'll stop immediately," he promised. She moved closer until they were standing mere inches apart. Give me your hand, she said softly. Ashton extended his right hand, and Serafina took it gently in both of hers. The first lesson is patience, she said, her voice low and hypnotic. Touch should never be rushed, never be taken. It should be given freely, received with gratitude. She guided his palm to her cheek, showing him how to caress with reverence instead of possession. His touch was feather-light, trembling with restraint. I'm not going to break, she assured him. You don't have to be afraid. I've been afraid for so long, he admitted, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. I've forgotten how to be anything else. Then let me remind you. Serafina leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. Let me show you what it means to trust. For the next hour, she taught him the language of gentle touch, how to read the subtle signs of pleasure versus pain, how to give comfort instead of taking satisfaction. With each lesson, she felt the curse weakening, the dark magic that had bound his family for generations beginning to fracture. But she also felt something else, something far more dangerous than any curse. She was falling in love with him. There's something else, Ashton said, as their lesson came to an end. Something I need to show you. He led her from the library deeper into the castle, to a wing she hadn't yet explored. The corridors here were darker, older, with tapestries that depicted battles and bloodshed from centuries past. Where are we going? Serafina asked. To see the heart of the curse, he replied grimly. They stopped before a heavy oak door bound with iron. Ashton produced an ornate key from his pocket, and the lock turned with a sound like distant thunder. The room beyond took Serafina's breath away. It was a shrine, but not to any god she recognized. The walls were covered with portraits of women, dozens of them, all beautiful, all bearing expressions of sorrow or fear. Who are they? She whispered. Every woman who has died because of my family's curse, Ashton replied, his voice heavy with old grief. My ancestors commissioned these portraits to remember them, to ensure their sacrifices weren't forgotten. Serafina moved closer to study the paintings, her heart breaking with each face she saw. Young women, old women, rich and poor alike, all united by the same tragic fate. But it was the portrait at the very center of the room that made her blood run cold. Lady Morgana Blackwood stared back at her from the canvas, her dark hair flowing like water, her silver eyes holding secrets that could damn or save. But it wasn't just the resemblance that shocked Serafina to her core. It was the crescent moon mark, clearly visible on the woman's left shoulder. She looks like you, Ashton said softly, moving to stand beside her. Serafina couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because she was staring at herself. Not a resemblance, not a family similarity. She was looking at her exact likeness, painted 3 centuries ago. Serafina? Ashton's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? She turned to him with tears streaming down her face, knowing that the time for lies was over, knowing that she could no longer hide what she truly was. I need to tell you something, she whispered, something that will change everything between us. What is it? I'm not just descended from Lady Morgana Blackwood, she said, her voice breaking with the weight of her confession. I am Lady Morgana Blackwood. The silence that followed was deafening. Ashton stared at her as if she had grown horns and wings before his eyes. That's impossible, he said finally. She died 300 years ago. She was reborn, Serafina replied, her hand moving instinctively to cover the mark on her shoulder. Again and again, in every generation, the same soul, the same power, the same curse, waiting for the chance to make things right. You're saying you're immortal? I'm saying I'm cursed. Just as you are. She turned back to the portrait, seeing her own face staring back at her across the centuries. Every generation, I'm born again with the same memories, the same pain, the same desperate need to undo what I did in a moment of rage and heartbreak. Ashton was very still beside her. What did you do? I loved the Duke of Ravencroft, she whispered. Edmund, I loved him with everything I had, everything I was, but he was promised to another, a political alliance that would secure his family's power. When I begged him to choose love over duty, he laughed at me. The memory rose up like a tide of bitter poison. Edmund's cruel laughter echoing through the gardens where they had once walked hand in hand. His words cutting deeper than any blade. You're nothing but a dalliance, Morgana, a pretty witch to warm my bed until I take my proper wife. Did you truly think I would marry a creature like you? So you cursed him, Ashton said, his voice carefully neutral. I cursed his bloodline, Serafina corrected. In my rage and heartbreak, I doomed every Ravencroft man to die without an heir, to know the same loneliness and despair that Edmund had condemned me to. She turned to face him, her silver eyes blazing with 3 centuries of regret. But I never meant for innocent women to die, Ashton. I never wanted their blood on my hands. That was the curse turning back on itself, growing stronger and more twisted with each generation. And you've been living with this guilt for 300 years. Living, dying, being reborn to live it again. Tears streamed freely down her face now. Do you understand why I came here? Why I answered your letter? I'm not here to teach you how to love without killing. I'm here to break the curse I created. To finally set both our bloodlines free. Ashton stared at her for a long moment, his storm-grey eyes unreadable. Then, to her amazement, he reached out and pulled her into his arms. I should hate you, he said softly, his lips against her hair, for what you did to my family, for the lives lost because of your curse. I hate myself, she whispered against his chest. I have for 3 centuries, but I can't hate you. His arms tightened around her, because you're trying to fix it, because you're willing to sacrifice everything to undo what you did. Serafina pulled back to look at him, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing in his eyes. Not hatred, not fear, but understanding, compassion, something that might even be love. How do we break it? He asked. The curse. How do we end this once and for all? Serafina's heart broke all over again, because she knew the answer, had always known, even if she'd tried to deny it. The curse can only be broken by true love, freely given, she said, her voice barely audible. A Ravencroft and a Blackwood must love each other completely, without reservation or condition. And then, one of us has to die. The words hung between them like a death sentence, because Serafina knew, had always known, that the price for 3 centuries of guilt would be her own life. The curse could only be broken by the blood of the one who created it. No. Ashton's voice was fierce, final. There has to be another way. There isn't. Serafina touched his face gently, memorizing every line, every feature. This is why I made you promise that I would leave when it was over. Because I won't be able to stay. I won't let you die for my sake. It's not just for your sake, she replied softly. It's for all the innocent women who have died because of what I did. It's for the children who were never born, the love that was never allowed to flourish. It's for 3 centuries of pain and loneliness and fear. There has to be another way, he repeated desperately. If there is, we'll find it, Serafina promised, though she knew in her heart that they wouldn't. But until then, let me love you. Let me give you what Edmund took from Morgana all those years ago. Let me show you what it means to be loved without conditions or reservations. Serafina, please, She reached up to capture his lips in a kiss that tasted of tears and desperation and 3 centuries of longing. "Let me love you while I can." And there, in that room filled with the ghosts of the past, Aston Ravenscroft and Lady Seraphina Blackwood began the greatest and most dangerous love story ever told. A love that would either damn them both or set them free, but either way, it would end in blood. The days that followed Seraphina's confession passed like a fever dream. Aston threw himself into researching alternative ways to break the curse while Seraphina continued her lessons in love and intimacy. But always, the knowledge of what was coming hung over them like a sword waiting to fall. "I found something," Aston announced one morning, bursting into Seraphina's chambers with a dusty tome in his hands. A reference to another curse-breaking ritual, one that doesn't require death. Seraphina looked up from her embroidery, hope fluttering in her chest despite her better judgment. "What does it say?" "That a curse born of betrayed love can be broken by love freely given and received." He sat beside her on the window seat, his eyes bright with excitement. "But it has to be complete, total surrender. No reservations, no fears, no holding back." "You mean?" "I mean we have to become one in every way possible," he said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper. "Body, heart and soul. Complete union between our bloodlines." Seraphina's pulse raced. "Are you certain that will work?" "No," he admitted, "but it's worth trying. Anything is worth trying if it means keeping you alive." That evening, they dined together in Aston's private chambers, the meal served by candlelight and accompanied by wine that tasted of starlight and promises. They spoke of everything except what was coming. Their childhoods, their dreams, the lives they might have lived if not for the curse that bound them. "Dance with me," Aston said when the meal was finished, extending his hand with courtly grace. There was no music, but they didn't need any. They moved together in perfect harmony, as if they had been partners for lifetimes instead of weeks, which Seraphina supposed they had been. "I remember dancing with Edmund," she said softly as Aston spun her slowly in his arms. "But it was nothing like this." "How was it different?" "He danced with me because it was expected. Because I was beautiful and he enjoyed showing off his conquest." She looked up into Aston's storm-grey eyes. "You dance with me because you choose to, because you want to hold me close." "I never want to let you go," he murmured against her hair. "Then don't," she whispered back. "Not tonight. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll have tonight." The air between them shifted, becoming charged with possibility and desire. Aston's hands trembled as he framed her face, his thumbs tracing the high curve of her cheekbone. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Once we cross this line, there's no going back." "I've been certain for 300 years, she replied, covering his hands with her own. "I just finally found the right man to be certain about." What followed was a symphony of gentle touches and whispered endearments. Aston approached her body like a devotee approaching a shrine, with reverence and awe and infinite patience. Every kiss, every caress was an act of worship. Seraphina had expected pain when he finally claimed her fully. In her original life, intimacy with men had been rough, selfish, focused on their pleasure rather than hers. But Aston made love to her as if she were made of spun glass and starlight, as if her pleasure mattered more than his own. "I love you," he whispered against her throat as they moved together in the ancient rhythm of lovers throughout time. "I love you, Seraphina, not because of destiny or duty, but because you are everything beautiful in this world." "I love you too," she gasped, her nails digging into his shoulders as sensation overwhelmed her. "I love you, Aston. I have loved you across lifetimes." The magic sang in her blood as they reached the peak together, their souls intertwining as completely as their bodies. For a moment, Serafina felt the curse crack like ice in spring, felt the dark magic that had bound them for centuries beginning to fracture. And then, just as suddenly, it snapped back into place. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as understanding crashed over her. "No, it's not enough." "What do you mean?" Ashton gathered her close, his own breathing ragged. "The curse is too strong. 3 centuries of dark magic can't be broken by one night of love." She pulled back to look at him, her heart breaking at the hope dying in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Ashton. I hoped." "Then we'll find another way," he said fiercely. "We'll keep trying until we break it." "There is no other way." Serafina pressed her hand to his chest, over his heart that beat so strongly for her. "The ritual I told you about, it's the only way. One of us has to die to pay the price for what Morgana did." "Then let it be me," Ashton said without hesitation. "My family created this mess by betraying your love. Let me be the one to pay for it." "No." The word tore from Serafina's throat like a battle cry. "I won't let you die for my sins." They held each other through the night, neither sleeping, both trying to memorize the feel of the other's skin, the sound of their breathing, the steady rhythm of their heartbeats, because they both knew that time was running out. As dawn broke over Ravencroft Castle, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Serafina made her final choice. She would end this curse once and for all, but she would do it her way, in her time, on her terms, even if it meant breaking both their hearts in the process. The letter was waiting for Ashton when he woke, Serafina's elegant script dancing across cream-colored paper like a dagger through his heart. "My beloved Ashton," it read, "by the time you read this, I will be gone. Not forever, but far enough away to keep you safe, while I prepare for what must be done. Please do not try to find me. Please do not try to stop me. This is my choice, my burden, my price to pay. I love you more than life itself, which is why I must leave you now. The curse will be broken. I swear it, but I will not let you sacrifice yourself for sins that were never yours to bear. Remember our night together. Remember that for one perfect moment, we were free. All my love, always, Serafina." Ashton crumpled the letter in his fist, roaring his anguish to the morning sky. She was gone. The woman he loved, the other half of his soul, had vanished like mist before the dawn. But he wouldn't accept it. Couldn't accept it. He would find her, and when he did, he would convince her that there had to be another way. Because a world without Serafina Blackwood wasn't a world worth living in. 3 days later, he tracked her to the ancient stone circle in the heart of Ravencroft Forest. The same circle where, according to legend, Lady Morgana had first cast her curse 3 centuries ago. Serafina stood in the center of the circle, dressed in a gown of midnight blue silk that seemed to absorb the moonlight around her. Her long black hair flowed free down her back, and her silver eyes glowed with power that made the air itself shimmer. "I knew you would come," she said without turning around. "I hoped you wouldn't, but I knew you would. Did you really think I would let you do this alone?" Ashton dismounted from his horse and stepped into the circle, immediately feeling the ancient magic that pulsed through the stones. "Did you think I would let you die without fighting for you?" "I think you're the most stubborn man I've ever known," she replied, finally turning to face him. "In any lifetime. And I think you're the most beautiful, brave, selfless woman who ever drew breath." He moved toward her slowly, as if approaching a wild creature that might bolt at any sudden movement. "But you're also wrong about this being the only way. Ashton, marry me," he said suddenly, the words tumbling from his lips like a prayer. "Here, now, in this sacred place, bind yourself to me, not just with love, but with vows that will last beyond death." Serafina stared at him, as if he had lost his mind. You want to get married? Now? While I'm preparing to break the curse that will kill me. I want to marry you because you're preparing to break the curse, he corrected. If you're determined to sacrifice yourself for my family's sins, then at least let me claim you as my wife first. Let me give you that much. Tears streamed down her face like liquid starlight. It won't change anything. I'll still have to die to break the curse. Maybe not. Ashton pulled a small leather journal from his coat. I've been researching the curse non-stop since you left, and I found something, a passage in my ancestor's diary that's been mistranslated for centuries. What does it say? The original curse wasn't that a Ravencroft and Blackwood had to die to break it. It was that they had to be willing to die for each other. True love, proven by ultimate sacrifice. His eyes blazed with hope and determination. Don't you see, Seraphina, we've already proven that. You're willing to die to save me. I'm willing to die to save you. The curse should already be broken. But it's not, she said desperately. I can still feel it, Ashton. Still feel the dark magic eating away at both our bloodlines. Because we haven't completed the ritual. He moved closer, until he could take her hands in his. We've proven our love, but we haven't bound it. The curse can only be broken by marriage between our bloodlines, a union that creates something new, something stronger than the darkness. Seraphina wanted to believe him, wanted to hope that there might be another way, but 3 centuries of guilt and pain were hard to overcome with hope alone. And if you're wrong, she whispered, if we marry and the curse remains, if more innocent women die because I was too selfish to do what needed to be done, then we'll face it together. Ashton replied simply. As husband and wife, as partners bound by love and commitment and the determination to protect others from what we've suffered. The wind picked up around them, setting the ancient stones humming with power. Seraphina could feel the magic responding to their words, their emotions, their desperate hope for redemption. How? She asked. How do we marry ourselves in the middle of a forest with no priest, no witnesses, no legal documents? Ashton smiled, the expression transforming his face from handsome to breathtaking. The same way our ancestors did, before churches and laws and governments tried to control love. We pledge ourselves to each other before God and magic and the elements themselves. He dropped to one knee in the center of the stone circle, still holding her hands in his. Lady Seraphina Blackwood, descendant of ancient magic and keeper of my heart, will you take me as your husband? Will you bind your life to mine, your soul to my soul, your destiny to my destiny, for as long as we both shall live? The formal words hit Seraphina like a physical blow, because she had heard them before, 3 centuries ago, when a different Duke of Ravencroft had knelt before her and made promises he never intended to keep. But this was different. Ashton was different. She could see the truth shining in his storm-grey eyes, could feel the sincerity radiating from every line of his body. Yes, she whispered, her voice carrying across the stone circle like a bell. Yes, I will take you as my husband. I will bind my life to yours, my soul to your soul, my destiny to your destiny, for as long as we both shall live and beyond. Ashton rose and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around as joy and relief and desperate love overwhelmed them both. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Your turn, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Seraphina took a deep breath and dropped to her knees before him, her midnight gown pooling around her like dark water. Duke Ashton Ravencroft, keeper of my heart and guardian of my soul, will you take me as your wife? Will you love me through darkness and light, through joy and sorrow, through curses and blessings, until death itself cannot part us? I will, he replied, his voice ringing through the forest like a vow sworn before heaven itself. I will love you through darkness and light, through joy and sorrow, through curses and blessings, until death itself cannot part us, and beyond. They sealed their vows with a kiss that tasted of starlight and promises, their souls intertwining as completely as their destinies had been intertwined for 3 centuries. And in that moment, as their lips met in the center of the ancient stone circle, the curse finally, completely, irrevocably shattered. The magic hit them like a tidal wave of light and power, washing away 3 centuries of darkness in an instant. Serafina felt the weight she had carried for so long simply disappear. The guilt, the pain, the crushing responsibility for so many deaths. Gone. All of it gone. When the light faded, and they could see clearly again, they found themselves no longer alone in the stone circle. Translucent figures surrounded them, the spirits of all those who had died because of the curse. But instead of accusation or anger, their faces held only peace and gratitude. "Thank you," whispered the spirit of Lady Catherine Pemberton, the first woman to die from the Ravencroft curse. "Thank you for setting us free." One by one, the spirits faded into light, finally able to move on to whatever waited beyond, until only one remained. Lady Morgana Blackwood stood before them, no longer the bitter, heartbroken woman who had cast the curse in a moment of rage. She appeared as she had been before Edmund's betrayal, young, beautiful, full of love and hope. "My other self," she said to Serafina, her voice like an echo from across the centuries. "You have done what I could not. You have chosen love over revenge, healing over hatred. The curse is broken, never to return." "What happens now?" Serafina asked. "Now you live," Morgana replied with a smile that held all the warmth the world had to offer. "You love. You create the life together that Edmund's betrayal stole from us. You have children who will carry both bloodlines forward in light instead of darkness." She began to fade like morning mist, but her final words rang clear and true across the stone circle. "Be happy, my dear ones. You have earned it." 6 months later, Duchess Serafina Ravencroft stood in the rose garden of Ravencroft Castle, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where their first child grew. The curse was broken, never to return, and their love had created something new and beautiful. Ashton came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "Only one," she replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. "I regret that it took us 3 centuries to find each other." Ashton chuckled, the sound vibrating through his chest into her back. "Well, we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." "Just one lifetime?" Serafina turned in his arms to face him, her silver eyes sparkling with mischief. "I was hoping for several." "Greedy woman," he murmured against her lips. "Your greedy woman," she corrected. "Your wife, your duchess, your partner in all things." "Forever," he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted of roses and redemption, and the kind of love that could break curses and remake destinies. In the distance, the church bells of Ravencroft village began to ring, calling the faithful to evening prayer. But Ashton and Serafina had already found their heaven. They had found it in each other's arms, in the life growing within her, in the future stretching bright and unbounded before them. The curse was broken, the darkness was lifted, and love, as it always does, had found a way. They lived happily ever after, not because it was easy, but because they chose each other every single day. And in choosing love over fear, hope over despair, healing over hatred, they rewrote the ending that had been written in blood and magic 3 centuries before. Some stories end in tragedy, but this one ended in joy. And that, dear listeners, is the most powerful magic of all. Once upon a time, in a beautiful kingdom far away, there lived a princess named Elara. She had long golden hair and kind blue eyes, but Princess Elara was different from other princesses. She could not speak. For 22 years, Princess Elara had never said a single word. The castle doctors said it was a curse. The priest said it was God's plan. Her father, King Edmund, said it was embarrassing. But there was one person who thought her silence was beautiful. His name was Sir Marcus, and he was a knight who worked in the castle. Marcus had dark hair and gentle brown eyes. He was different from the other knights because he loved to read books instead of just fighting with swords. "Your silence speaks louder than words," Marcus had whispered to Elara one day in the castle garden. "You say everything with your eyes." Princess Elara had fallen in love with Sir Marcus, and he had fallen in love with her. They would meet secretly in the garden every evening, where Marcus would read her beautiful poems and stories. Even though Elara couldn't speak, Marcus understood everything she was trying to say by watching her face and her gestures. But their happiness was about to end, because Princess Elara was supposed to marry someone else. Prince Aldrich of Ravencrest had come to marry Princess Elara. He had golden hair and blue eyes, and he looked handsome. But there was something cold and mean about him that made Elara scared. "You're quite lovely when you're not talking," Prince Aldrich said to Elara during their wedding feast. "I hate women who talk too much. They give me headaches." Elara tried to pull her hand away from his, but Prince Aldrich held it tighter. "We must look happy together," he said with a fake smile. "After all, we'll be spending lots of time together once we're married." The way he said it made Elara feel sick to her stomach. She looked across the great hall and saw Marcus watching. He looked very angry and worried. After the feast, Prince Aldrich walked Elara to her room. When they got to her door, he pushed her against the wall. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" he asked, in a scary voice. Elara shook her head and tried to reach for the door handle. Prince Aldrich slammed his hand against the door beside her head. "I asked you a question." Elara stared at him, her heart beating fast. Even if she could speak, she wouldn't have been able to find words. "Oh, that's right," Prince Aldrich said, with a mean smile. "The poor little princess who can't talk, can't even scream for help if she needed to." Just then, a servant walked down the hallway. Prince Aldrich immediately stepped back and put on his fake nice smile again. "Until tomorrow, my beloved," he said loudly so the servant could hear. Then he kissed Elara's hand in a way that felt like a threat. When he was gone, Elara leaned against her door, shaking. She had to marry this terrible man in just 2 days, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Sir Marcus couldn't sleep that night. He was worried about Princess Elara and angry about Prince Aldrich, so he decided to find out more about this prince who was going to marry the woman he loved. Marcus talked to servants who had worked in Prince Aldrich's castle. He talked to merchants who had visited his kingdom, and what he learned made his blood run cold. Prince Aldrich had been engaged to marry 3 other princesses before Elara, and all 3 of those princesses had died right before their weddings. Lady Catherine had gotten sick and died from poison. Lady Margaret had fallen off her horse and broken her neck. Lady Isabel had drowned in her bathtub. Prince Aldrich said they were all accidents, but Marcus didn't believe it. Marcus realized that Prince Aldrich was planning to kill Princess Elara too, but he had to prove it first. The next morning, Marcus went to King Edmund with all the information he had gathered. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, "I believe Prince Aldrich is a murderer. He killed his other 3 fiancées, and he's planning to kill Princess Elara too." King Edmund listened to all of Marcus's evidence. His face grew very angry and worried. "You're saying that Prince Aldrich never planned To actually marry any of these women? The king asked. That's right, Marcus said. I think he uses the weddings to get close to the kingdoms, then kills the princesses to make the kingdoms weak and sad. Then he can take them over more easily. King Edmund stood up, his face red with anger, and he thought he could use my daughter as bait for his evil plan. We have to stop the wedding, Marcus said. We have to. Suddenly, the door burst open. Prince Aldrich walked in with 6 of his guards, all carrying swords. Stop what wedding? Prince Aldrich asked with a cold smile. I heard you two having a very interesting conversation about me. King Edmund stepped in front of Marcus to protect him. Prince Aldrich, this is a private meeting. Oh, but this meeting is about me, Prince Aldrich said. His guards pointed their swords at the king and Marcus. I've been having you watched, Marcus. I know you've been asking questions about my past. Prince Aldrich walked around them like a hungry wolf. Did you really think I didn't know what you were doing? I've been planning this for months. You admit it then, King Edmund said, drawing his own sword. You murdered those innocent women. I admit nothing that can be proven. Prince Aldrich replied smoothly. Accidents happen. Young women get sick. They fall downstairs. They drown in bathtubs. These things just happen. His smile turned even more evil. But since you've made things complicated, I'll have to change my plans. Princess Ala will have a terrible accident tonight. Maybe she'll fall out of her window trying to escape a wedding she didn't want. Over my dead body, Marcus said angrily. That can be arranged too, Prince Aldrich agreed. He told his guards, kill them both. Make it look like they attacked me first. The guards raised their swords and moved forward, but King Edmund was ready. He had a secret alarm in his room that called his own guards. Within seconds, the room was full of fighting men with clashing swords. In all the confusion, Marcus managed to break free and run toward the door. Find Princess Alara, King Edmund shouted over the noise of the fight. Protect my daughter. Marcus ran through the castle as fast as he could. Behind him, he could hear Prince Aldrich shouting orders to his men. Kill the king. Find the princess. Don't let anyone escape. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was war. Marcus ran to Princess Alara's room, but when he got there, it was empty. The room looked like there had been a fight. Chairs were knocked over, jewelry was scattered on the floor, and the curtains were torn. Marcus's heart felt like it stopped. He was too late. Then he heard a scream echoing from somewhere deep in the castle. It was a woman's scream, and Marcus knew it had to be Alara. He followed the sound down stone stairs he had never seen before. The screaming led him to the old dungeons deep under the castle. These dark, scary rooms hadn't been used for many years. When Marcus finally found where the screaming was coming from, he saw the most terrible sight of his life. Princess Alara was chained to the wall with heavy iron chains around her wrists. The chains had cut her delicate skin and made her bleed. Prince Aldrich stood in front of her with a sharp, curved knife in his hand. "Ah, Sir Marcus," Prince Aldrich said, without turning around. "You're just in time. I was explaining to your beloved princess how she's going to help me send a message to her father." Marcus pulled out his sword and stepped into the room. "Let her go, Aldrich. If you want to fight someone, fight me." "But that's not how this works," Prince Aldrich replied, finally turning to face him. "I don't want to fight anyone. I want to take over this kingdom. I needed a princess to make my claim legal, but since that plan didn't work out, I'll just have to use fear instead." He pressed the point of his knife against Alara's throat. She made a small whimpering sound, the first sound Marcus had ever heard her make. "When King Edmund finds his daughter's body, along with yours, He'll know what happens to people who try to stop Prince Aldrich, the evil prince said. You're crazy, Marcus said, taking another step forward. Am I? Prince Aldrich laughed. I've taken over 3 kingdoms using this exact plan. It works very well. He drew a thin line of blood across Ilara's throat with his knife. She gasped in pain. Stop, Marcus shouted, raising his sword. I challenge you to a fair fight. Winner takes everything. That's the honorable way. Honor? Prince Aldrich laughed meanly. Honor is for fools and dead people. I prefer to win. He raised his knife to kill Princess Ilara. Marcus jumped forward to save Ilara, but Prince Aldrich had been ready for this. 4 of his guards came out of the shadows, where they had been hiding. They surrounded Marcus with their swords. Marcus fought as hard as he could. His sword flashed in the torchlight as he battled all 4 men at once, but there were too many of them. One guard's sword cut deep into Marcus's shoulder. Another blade sliced across his ribs. Blood ran down his arm, making it hard to hold his sword. But Marcus kept fighting. He fought for Ilara. He fought for love. He fought for the chance to hear her voice just once before they both died. Enough, Prince Aldrich commanded his guards. Don't kill him yet. I want him to watch what happens to his princess. Strong hands grabbed Marcus from behind and forced him to his knees. His sword fell to the stone floor too far away to reach. Prince Aldrich turned back to Ilara with his knife raised high. Any last words, my dear? Oh, that's right. You don't have any words at all. Ilara's eyes found Marcus across the dark room. He could see love in her eyes, but also something else. Something that looked like determination. She took a deep breath. She opened her mouth, and for the first time in 22 years, Princess Ilara spoke. Marcus, she whispered. The word was soft and quiet, but it felt like thunder in the silent dungeon. Everyone in the room froze in shock. Prince Aldrich's knife stopped moving. What did you... Marcus, Ilara screamed with all the power in her lungs. Her voice echoed off the stone walls like a battle cry. The sound of Ilara's voice, strong, clear and beautiful, broke more than just the silence. It broke the fear that had held her captive for 22 years. Suddenly, Ilara remembered everything that had made her stop talking. She had been only 5 years old, playing in the castle garden with her baby brother, Prince Thomas. He would have grown up to be the next king, but assassins had come to kill Thomas. Little Ella had seen them coming and tried to warn her brother. "Tommy, run!" she screamed, but her warning had been too loud. The bad men heard her and realized there was someone who could tell people what they had done. They chased her and caught her by the fountain. "If you ever tell anyone what you saw here," one of them had said, holding her head underwater until she couldn't breathe, "we'll come back and kill you too. Stay quiet, little princess, or you'll end up like your brother." They had killed Prince Thomas anyway and made it look like an accident. But 5-year-old Ilara was so scared that her mind locked away her voice completely. She thought that if she never spoke again, the bad men wouldn't come back for her. For 17 years, that fear had kept her silent. But now, seeing the man she loved about to die, the spell was finally broken. "I love you," she screamed at Marcus, her voice getting stronger with every word. "I love you and I won't let them hurt you." The iron chains that held her wrists began to crack. Not because of magic, but because she was pulling against them so hard that the old metal couldn't hold. Prince Aldrich stared at her in shock. "This is impossible. You can't speak. You're mute." "I can speak," Ilara roared, and the first chain snapped completely. "And I will." She swung the broken chain like a weapon, hitting Prince Aldrich across the face with the heavy iron. He stumbled backward, crying out in pain and surprise. The second chain broke under her desperate pulling. Blood ran down her wrists where the metal had cut her, but she didn't feel any pain. She only felt anger and love and the power of finally having her voice back. Marcus used the confusion to break free from his guards. Even though his shoulder was badly hurt, he managed to grab his sword and fight back. "Kill them both," Prince Aldrich screamed, holding his bleeding face. But it was too late for him. King Edmund's guards had finally found the hidden entrance to the old dungeons. They poured into the room with their weapons ready, outnumbering Prince Aldrich's men 3-1. The battle was quick. Prince Aldrich's guards were trapped with no way to escape. One by one, they were defeated. Prince Aldrich himself tried to run through a secret passage, but Marcus was faster. He caught the evil prince and held a sword to his throat. "Give up," Marcus commanded. "I give up to no one," Prince Aldrich snarled and tried to stab Marcus with a hidden knife. But before the knife could hit Marcus, Alara's voice rang out across the room one more time. "Stop!" The word hit Prince Aldrich like a physical blow. He froze with his knife in the air, trembling. There was something in Alara's voice, some power that came from her royal blood, and years of stored-up authority that even a killer couldn't ignore. "You want to know why I couldn't speak?" Alara asked, walking toward him. "It's because of men like you. Men who kill children and threaten little girls and think fear makes them powerful." Her voice was growing richer and stronger with every word, like a singer finding her range after years of silence. "But fear only works if you let it," she continued, "and I'm done being afraid." The trial of Prince Aldrich became the most famous court case in the kingdom's history. For the first time in 22 years, Princess Alara spoke in public. Her testimony was clear and powerful. She told the court about seeing her brother's murder when she was 5. She told them about the years of fear and silence. She told them about the pattern of deaths among Prince Aldrich's previous fiancés. Her voice never shook, even when she talked about the most painful memories. Marcus sat in the front row of the courtroom, giving her strength with his presence. Prince Aldrich was found guilty of 7 murders and sentenced to death. The people who had helped him cover up his crimes were sent to prison or exiled from the kingdom. But the most important thing that came from the trial was personal, not political. The morning after Prince Aldrich was sentenced, King Edmund called both Alara and Marcus to his private office. This time, the meeting was very different from their previous one. "Sir Marcus," the king began, "I owe you an apology, and I owe you a debt I can never repay." Marcus bowed his head respectfully. "You don't owe me anything, Your Majesty. I did what anyone would have done." "No," King Edmund said firmly, "you did what a man in love would do. You risked everything to save my daughter, not for money or power, but for love." He turned to Alara, who was standing beside Marcus with their hands held together. "And you, my dear daughter," he said softly, "I failed you. For 17 years, I didn't see that your silence came from pain, not from something wrong with you. I tried to marry you off like property instead of treasuring you like the wonderful person you are." Tears ran down Alara's cheeks, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "You couldn't have known, Father. I couldn't even remember it myself until—" She squeezed Marcus's hand. "Until I had something important enough to find my voice for." King Edmund smiled, the first real smile Alara had seen from him in years. "Sir Marcus, you asked for my daughter's hand in marriage before. At the time I said no because I thought I had already promised her to someone else." His smile grew wider. "I'm happy to say I can change my mind about that decision. The question is, do you still want to marry a princess who's likely to have plenty of opinions now that she can speak them?" Marcus laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. "Your Majesty, I fell in love with her mind long before I ever heard her voice. Being able to hear her thoughts will only make me love her more. And you, Elara? Her father asked. Do you want to marry this knight who came to us in disguise? For Marcus had revealed that he was actually a prince from another kingdom, sent as a secret ambassador. Elara turned to face Marcus, her eyes bright with happy tears. Marcus, she said, loving the way his name felt on her tongue after so many months of only being able to think it. I have loved you since the day you told me that scattered flowers look more beautiful than perfect ones. I loved you when I thought you were a knight. I love you now that I know you're a prince. I would love you if you were a farmer or a shopkeeper or anyone at all. She took his hands in both of hers. But most of all, I love you because you saw beauty in my silence and gave me a reason to find my voice. So yes, I want to marry you. Today, tomorrow, as soon as possible. Marcus dropped to one knee right there in the king's office, pulling a simple gold ring from his pocket. Princess Elara, he said formally, though his eyes danced with happiness, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I promise to love you in silence and in speech, in sadness and in joy, for all the days of my life. Yes, Elara laughed, the word bubbling up from her heart, like spring water. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, King Edmund cleared his throat. Well then, he said with satisfaction, I suppose we have another wedding to plan. And this time I think it will end very differently. The wedding of Princess Elara and Prince Marcus was the most joyful celebration the kingdom had ever seen. People came from far and wide to witness the marriage of the princess who had found her voice and the prince who had helped her find it. Elara wore a dress of pure white silk that sparkled like starlight. Her voice rang clear and strong as she spoke her wedding vows in front of all the assembled guests. Marcus, she said, you loved me when I was silent, and you love me now that I can speak. You saw beauty in what others called broken. You gave me courage when I had none. Today I promise to spend my life using my voice to speak truth, to offer comfort, and to tell you every day how much I love you. Marcus's vows were equally beautiful. Elara, you taught me that listening is more important than talking, that love is stronger than fear, and that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones that go unspoken. I promise to listen to your voice, to treasure your words, and to help you use your gift to make the world a better place. When they kissed, the entire kingdom cheered. But the happiest person there was King Edmund, who finally got to see his daughter truly smile. After their wedding, Marcus and Elara ruled their kingdoms together. They combined their lands into one large, peaceful realm where everyone was treated fairly. But Queen Elara's most important work was helping other people find their voices too. She started the first school for children who had been hurt or scared into silence. Every child deserves to be heard, Queen Elara announced at the school's opening. Whether they speak with words or with art or with music or just with their hearts. Children came from many kingdoms to attend the school. They learned reading and math and history, but they also learned how to heal from their fears and how to communicate in whatever way felt safe for them. King Marcus often visited the school to read stories to the children, just as he had once read to Elara in the garden. Why do you think the prince fell in love with the silent princess? A little girl named Sarah asked one day during story time. Marcus thought carefully about the question. I think, he said, because he learned to listen with more than just his ears. He listened with his heart. But how do you listen with your heart? Another child asked. Queen Elara, who had been listening from the doorway, came into the classroom. You pay attention to how people make you feel, she explained. You notice the kindness in their eyes. You watch how they treat others, especially those who are smaller or need help. Like animals? A boy named Peter asked. Exactly like animals, Elara said. King Marcus was always gentle with the horses and dogs around the castle. That told me he had a kind heart, even before I heard him speak. Did you really not talk for 22 years? Sarah asked with wide eyes. 22 years, Elara confirmed. It felt like forever at the time. But now I know that sometimes we need time to find our strength before we can use our voice. What if I never want to talk again? Peter asked quietly. He was one of their newest students, still struggling with whatever had hurt him. Elara knelt beside his chair. Then you don't have to, she said gently. There's no rule that says you must speak to be important, but if someday you want to try, we'll be here to listen. Peter nodded, though he didn't say anything more that day. But 3 months later, he whispered his first word in years, "Thank you." It was spoken so softly that only Queen Elara heard it, but it was enough. It was a beginning. As the years passed, Marcus and Elara had 3 wonderful children. Prince Thomas was named after Elara's brother, who had died. He inherited his mother's gift for understanding people and his father's love of languages. By age 5, he could speak in 4 different languages and was learning 2 more. Princess Catherine was born with what the castle staff called the sight. She could often tell when people were sad or afraid, even when they tried to hide it. Like her mother, she seemed to hear the words people couldn't say. Prince William, their youngest, had an unusual gift for making people smile. Even the grumpiest castle guards would laugh when little William toddled up to them with his arms out for a hug. "We're raising the next generation of listeners," Marcus said one evening as they watched their children play in the garden. "Good," Elara replied. "The world needs more people who know how to truly hear others." Their children were learning not just regular school subjects like math and history, but also kindness, understanding, and how to communicate in many different ways. Thomas was learning to paint and write music. Catherine was studying with the castle's healers, learning how to help people work through emotional pain. Even little William was encouraged to use his natural gift for bringing joy to others. "Do you think they'll be good rulers someday?" Marcus asked. Elara watched Thomas help Catherine reach a flower that was too high for her, then saw both of them rush to comfort William when he scraped his knee. "I think they'll be good people," she said, "which is more important than being good rulers. Good people who happen to rule tend to create better kingdoms." The most surprising change came from an unexpected place. News arrived that King Brutus of Shadowmere, a cruel ruler from a neighboring kingdom, was marching toward their borders with an army. He wanted to destroy what he called their weakness before it could spread to other kingdoms. Most rulers would have prepared for war, but Elara had a different idea. "What if we don't meet violence with violence?" she suggested. "What if we show them what our kingdom is really like?" Instead of weapons and walls, they prepared welcome banners and feast tables. Instead of soldiers in battle formation, they organized their people to show visitors their schools, hospitals, and workshops. When King Brutus's army arrived, they found the city gates wide open and the roads lined with people holding flowers instead of swords. The soldiers were confused. They had expected a fight, not a welcome party. King Brutus himself was furious. "What is this?" he demanded. "Some kind of trick?" "It's an invitation," Elara replied calmly. "Your soldiers have traveled far. They must be hungry and tired. We've prepared food and rest for everyone who needs it." The most powerful moment came when little Princess Catherine walked up to King Brutus without any fear. "Are you here to hurt people?" she asked, with genuine curiosity. "Because you look sad, not angry." "Sad people usually need hugs, not fights." King Brutus stared down at the fearless child. "You're not afraid of me?" he said, sounding amazed. Should I be? Catherine asked. My mama says we should only be afraid of people who want to hurt us for no good reason. Do you want to hurt me for no good reason? Around them, King Brutus could see his soldiers talking with citizens, accepting food and water, even laughing at shared jokes. They weren't acting like enemies at all. What followed was the strangest military encounter in history. Instead of fighting, there were conversations and shared meals. Instead of battles, there were tours of schools and discussions about how to run a kingdom fairly. By evening, many of King Brutus's own soldiers had decided they didn't want to fight against such kind people. Some even asked if they could stay and become citizens of this wonderful kingdom. King Brutus himself was the most shocked of all. He had spent 30 years ruling through fear, thinking that was the only way to be strong. But seeing how happy and productive Alara and Marcus's people were, he began to question everything he thought he knew about power. The breaking point came when one of his soldiers stood up during dinner and said, "Your Majesty, my sister fled our kingdom 3 years ago. I thought she was dead, but today I found her working in the castle kitchen, earning honest money and sending her children to school. She's not a rebel or a criminal. She's just a mother who wanted her children to have a better life." Many other soldiers had similar stories. They had family members who had disappeared over the years, people who had actually just found somewhere safer to live. In the end, King Brutus broke down and cried. All his beliefs about strength and fear crumbled when he saw what kindness could accomplish. It was little William who offered the crying king a hug, saying simply, "It's okay. Mama says everyone can be better tomorrow than they were today." King Brutus stayed in their kingdom for 2 months, learning new ways to rule and, more importantly, new ways to be human. Queen Alara and King Marcus taught him that true strength came from protecting people, not scaring them. When King Brutus returned to his own kingdom, he was a completely different person. He apologized to his people for 30 years of cruel rule. He started schools and hospitals. He created ways for citizens to share their ideas without being punished. The changes weren't easy or quick. Some people didn't trust that King Brutus had really changed. But gradually, his kingdom became a happier, safer place to live. News of these transformations spread to other kingdoms. Soon, rulers from many lands were visiting to learn about governing with kindness instead of fear. Queen Alara's school for silent children became a model that was copied throughout the region. Children who had been hurt or scared found safe places to heal and learn that their voices mattered. A network of allied kingdoms formed, all committed to treating their people fairly and solving problems through cooperation instead of war. 10 years after their wedding, Queen Alara stood in the same garden where she had first fallen in love with Marcus. But now she wasn't alone. Their 3 children played nearby, along with many other children from various kingdoms. The garden had been expanded to include a special grove of trees planted in memory of all those who had died before the changes came. Prince Thomas, Prince Aldrich's murdered brides, the victims of King Brutus's harsh rule, and many others whose names would never be known, but whose suffering was not forgotten. "Tell us the story again, Mama," Princess Catherine requested. She was now 11 and already showing signs of inheriting her mother's gift for understanding people. "Which story?" Alara asked, though she already knew the answer. "The story of how you found your voice," said Prince Thomas, now 13. "And how Papa learned to listen with his heart," added Prince William, now 9. Other children gathered around to hear the familiar but beloved tale. The story of the silent princess and the listening knight had become famous throughout all the allied kingdoms. Once upon a time, Alara began, settling onto the stone bench beside the fountain. There was a princess who had forgotten how to speak. As she told the story, Alara's eyes found Marcus across the garden. He was talking with King Benedict, formerly King Brutus, who had become one of their closest friends. The former tyrant was now known throughout the region for his wisdom and kindness, and when the princess finally screamed his name, Alara continued, it wasn't just her voice that broke free. It was the voice of everyone who had been silenced by fear, by cruelty, by the belief that some people's words mattered more than others. But the story doesn't end there, one of the children prompted. No, Alara agreed. Because that's when the real work began. Finding your voice is only the first step. Learning how to use it wisely, how to listen to others, how to build bridges instead of walls, that's the work of a lifetime. Are you still learning? Asked a young girl who had recently arrived from a kingdom that was just beginning its own transformation. Every day, Alara answered honestly. Your father and I, all the allied rulers, everyone who chooses to build their life on love instead of fear, we're all still learning. As the years passed, the changes that began with one princess finding her voice spread throughout the known world. Kingdoms that had once been enemies became allies. Children grew up believing their voices mattered. People learned that strength came from lifting others up, not putting them down. Queen Alara and King Marcus ruled wisely and lovingly for many years. Their children grew up to be leaders who carried on their parents' work of building a better world. Prince Thomas became known as the peacemaker, helping different kingdoms solve their disagreements through talking instead of fighting. Princess Catherine became the great healer, establishing hospitals and counseling centers throughout the Allied lands. Prince William became the joy bringer, creating festivals and celebrations that brought people together across all borders. The School for Silent Children continued to grow and help hundreds of young people find their voices and their courage. Many of these children grew up to become teachers, healers, leaders, and artists who made the world more beautiful and kind. But perhaps the most important legacy was the simplest one. People learned to listen to each other. They learned that everyone has something valuable to say, even if they don't say it with words. They learned that love is stronger than fear, that kindness is more powerful than cruelty, and that even the most broken things can be healed with patience and care. In the royal garden, the fountain continued its eternal song, a sound like voices murmuring in harmony, like hearts beating together, like the gentle persistence of love wearing away the hardest stone. And if you listened very carefully on quiet evenings, you could still hear the echo of a princess's voice calling out in the darkness, breaking a curse that had lasted 22 years and starting a transformation that would last forever. The story was finished, but the echo would never end.